Hey guys, what is up? It is Crypto Bobby. Hope you are having a good day and wanted to hop into YouTube Live today. If you are joining me right now live or if you're watching a recording of this, really just wanted to hop into YouTube Live today to walk through some of the crazy movements that have happened in the past couple of hours with Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin is right now presently pretty much skyrocketing from earlier in the day, around 10 a.m. Eastern time. It was trading below $5,800. It made a nice movement up all the way to around $6,000, and had a little bit of a stabilization around $6,000 for not very long, for a little bit, maybe a few hours. What is up, everybody? What is up? And now is up, pushing $6,200 again. So definitely want to talk about the overall movements right now. As far as what Bitcoin goes. And looking at the overall kind of market as of right now with crypto, with Bitcoin, like I said, definitely wanted to pop in here and get a feel for what you guys are thinking, kind of where you're looking at, and really wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about Bitcoin's movements, about some of the movements we're seeing elsewhere in the marketplace, and answer your questions as we go through. And if you are new guys, I definitely try to answer as many questions as possible. But if there is anything super pressing that you definitely want to, you definitely need answered, throw it in the super chat, and I'll definitely be able to answer it from there too. And just checking on my phone to make sure that everything is looking good here as well. So awesome, guys! Appreciate you taking the time and looking at the market movements today. I mean, a lot of people were saying that there was some consolidation from Bitcoin's perspective below. There was some consolidation around the $5,800 mark, $5,700 mark before Bitcoin made that move up. It looks like that was kind of that was some of the point there. And hearing some different comments on maybe it's some positive news from China as well. I think a lot of this too is due to the Bitcoin SegWit 2x fork. I still think that's a pretty I still think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be throwing money into Bitcoin in advance of Bitcoin 2x or B2x, in advance of that fork, because they are going to view that as somewhat of a dividend. And I think a lot of the mainstream media now too, even like Bloomberg and CNBC, are basically positioning it as positioning B2X. While it is, some people can say and argue that it's an attack on the Bitcoin network, and not healthy for Bitcoin's environment as a whole, which I tend to agree with. I try to look at it in a best case scenario and look at it as somewhat of a dividend there. So it's been pretty interesting and crazy to see Bitcoin's run. And it looks like right now that I didn't get to see this specifically live, but it looks like Bitcoin basically made a run all the way up to $6,300, got some resistance, and a bunch of people sold off. Maybe already had existing sell orders at that 6,300 mark, and then moved it back down. But it looks like we're picking up some steam above $6,200 again. And somebody just mentioned, just hold till B2X. I think that's kind of the boat I'm looking at, is just kind of chilling out and holding until Bitcoin 2X. Although in advance of that, with what we saw with the Bitcoin Gold, there could potentially be a fairly decent sized Bitcoin sell off following the Bitcoin 2X, the B2X fork. So that might be something where that's an opportunity to. We'll see how it runs up. But if Bitcoin Gold was any indication of the potential movements, if it mirrors the Bitcoin Gold movements up until the fork, Bitcoin rose up until the fork and then sold off after that fork happened, has consolidated a little bit, and has now made a move upwards as well. And looking at some of these questions, some people have said Bitcoin Gold is a joke. I mean it's at this point in time, technically speaking, it looks. I mean it's pretty. It was more built up than it probably should have been, just because it had the Bitcoin name on it was I think the reason that a lot of the excitement was around it. And there were a lot of people that there were a lot of people that were really jacked up about Bitcoin Gold and really interested in Bitcoin Gold, and it's really been a non-issue in the market. SegWit 2x is a lot bigger deal for a number of different reasons, really because of it actually has industry backing from some people with the New York agreement. So it's going to be I would say a touchy situation as far as how the market handles B2X. I still think Bitcoin Core, the original Bitcoin, is definitely going to be what's going to sustain long term, and it's going to be what you're going to want to keep an eye on. But B2X, for me personally, I think that's going to be a nice dividend to reinvest back into the overall marketplace there. And I'll pop over to CoinMarketCap because I know a couple different people are asking about certain cryptos here and what they're interested in seeing, what they want to see here. So couple different impressive things. So right now, for the most part, top 10, the market's up, mostly following Bitcoin. Not much is outperforming Bitcoin at this point in time, minus Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash has really had an interesting couple of days. Bitcoin Cash has had a ton of volume pumped in from Korea, which has been, if we pop over to here, I talked about Bitcoin Cash a little bit in today's video, but BitHum is trading over $1 billion of daily volume right now in Korea with Bitcoin Cash, which is really pumping up some of that price. It's been pretty crazy to see that happen. And outside of Bitcoin Cash, that's been the big market movement, with everything else kind of trailing Bitcoin in terms of the overall movements as well. Yeah, and some people here are saying no SegWit 2x, which is, I definitely get that. I'm not a proponent of SegWit 2x. I really don't know many people. I mean, maybe it's just because there's, it can be somewhat of an echo chamber, but I don't know many people that seem to be proponents of SegWit 2x, minus some of the business people. Now that SegWit is enabled on Bitcoin, and now that there's Bitcoin Cash, which has increased the size of the blocks, you kind of have a choice of one or the other. So SegWit 2x is kind of the in-between. It doesn't necessarily seem as necessary as potentially other things might be, or other issues might be. And I think, who knows what the miners are going to have. I think the miners are going to have a big impact on this and how it moves forward. But it seems like the majority of the user community is pretty much firmly in the SegWit 2x. B2X is not a needed cryptocurrency right now, and really not a needed fork. But that, at the same point in time, if you're just looking at it from an investment perspective and not necessarily from a technical lens, I mean, it really is basically a dividend, in my opinion, of you hold. It's exactly what a dividend is in the stock market. You hold a stock and you get basically you get cash for holding that stock on a quarterly basis or on an annual basis. Right now, you're getting dividends essentially when you hold Bitcoin with these forks. Granted, are these forks confusing the network? Are these forks kind of providing FUD for Bitcoin as well? Yeah, they are. But if I'm just looking at it in a traditional monetary sense, I'm getting free money that you can, and you're getting free money that you can really choose to do whatever you want with, which is, I think, a pretty interesting thing. And that's also in a lot of respects, I think. And granted, there's other, there's other outside reasons to that as well. But I think that's also part of the reason why it makes sense for people to be buying, and the price of Bitcoin right now is moving up quite a bit, because it makes sense for people to, be buying Bitcoin because you are going to get free money. The question is, though, is how much Bitcoin 2x, how much B2X is worth, and will you make more money if you, let's say right now Bitcoin B2X is worth about 15% of, let's say right now, let's use this for an example as we're kind of talking through this. Say right now Bitcoin is about $6,200 and B2X is worth 15% of one Bitcoin. That means your one B2X will be worth about $930, that's a lot of money. And that's why in many respects here, if you have your money in altcoins, if you have your money in other cryptocurrency, are you going to be able to replicate a 15% return on investment over the course, or does it just make more sense to hold Bitcoin? And that's something you have to consider, is if you hold $6,200 worth of Bitcoin, or if you hold $6,200 worth of Litecoin, or or Neo or OMG or whatever, whatever you might be holding on to, are you going to make a 15% return on investment over that time period, or is that something that you don't think you're going to be able to do, which is something you definitely want to consider as you look at this fork. I don't remember exactly what the futures markets are trading at right now. I think it was around 15% or so. It might have been lower. Bitcoin Gold's futures markets were trading actually pretty high, and they've since Bitcoin Gold has become available, kind of just fallen off the map. So, and somebody just mentioned currently the B2X price is over $1,000, about $1,300 or $1,030, which is pretty crazy. I mean, that's a pretty fat dividend if that's how you're considering it. We'll see what ends up really happening there, but that's something that I think you want to consider as you're looking at this. Is if you hold, would you rather? It's a risk, it's definitely a risk, but if you hold Bitcoin, there you are basically guaranteed in the next 2 weeks. When that fork happens, if you if you have your money in Bitcoin, you're basically guaranteed to be getting a 10, 15+% dividend. You're basically guaranteed to be making, if you hold one Bitcoin, almost depending, the futures market could really drop and it could go down, but you're probably going to make a few $100 to $1,000, maybe over $1,000 just for holding one Bitcoin. On the other side of the spectrum, you could hold on to some altcoins and you can lose money or whatever it might be. So I think that's where people are going to be evaluating in this short term, and seeing what makes sense, if they should just hold on to Bitcoin, or if you think that maybe after after all this fork stuff dies down, people are going to say, okay, the fork happened, the snapshot happened, I'm going to take all my money from Bitcoin, and Bitcoin just went up to $6,200, whatever, $6,300, and it's kind of rocketing from there. I'm going to take that money, and now that the altcoins are down, I'm going to reinvest that back into the altcoins. And that is what happened immediately after the Bitcoin Gold fork, which means that I think it could certainly happen. Could certainly happen with the SegWit 2x, and I think even to a greater extent. So as I'm thinking about that, in my opinion, who knows? And this could certainly play out differently. But I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think that if there's any similarity to what happened with the whole Bitcoin Gold fork situation, where literally the second the snapshot happened, where they took the snapshot of, okay, you have Bitcoin there. This is how many Bitcoin Gold you get. The second that snapshot happened, people moved their Bitcoin into the altcoins, and the altcoins went up 10, 15, 20%. I think the same thing, could certainly happen with SegWit 2x, but on a greater scale. So we'll have to keep an eye on how that develops. But I would, for the time being, I would anticipate a little bit of a run or continued run with Bitcoin, because I think people are going to look at this as, regardless of the lack of replay protection or a lot of the negatives surrounding Bitcoin 2x, they're going to look at it as free cash. So it's not that often that people turn down guaranteed free cash. The incentives are there to hold Bitcoin. So not only the incentives are there to hold Bitcoin, but if you don't have Bitcoin, the incentives are there to buy it as well. And just taking a look at some of these comments here. So a lot of people mentioning Neo. Neo's been an interesting one. I haven't still firmly in the top 10, but hasn't always held up with the Neo and OMG. OMG has certainly cooled down quite a bit, where it really just hasn't been keeping pace with the movements of Bitcoin in the past month or so. Neo in a similar boat as well. And looking at, taking in some of these questions here too. Yeah, somebody mentioned, I guess, Cliff High, who I think has a paid white paper, a paid report, mentioned 68, 7,200, and then a drop before get to 10,000 by Christmas. That could certainly be realistic. I don't know if we're going to see that would be a lot of new money coming into the space, and I would guess institutional money. I think that's the big thing. And I talked a little bit about it previously, but I went to a meetup in New York City. It was hosted by Coin Fund, which is they invest in crypto-related assets, ICOs, that type of thing, companies. And they're based out of Brooklyn. They had a meetup, and it was about 150 people there, people that run, crypto hedge funds, people that are developers, founders. So it was really cool. I had a good time doing that. And, from there, from there, a lot of the big thing that people were talking about was the space is continuing to grow, but the controls from a regulatory perspective, the custodial services really need to be in place for a lot of this big institutional money to get in. And that's something that I'm going to keep an eye on and continue to look at, because there is a ton of institutional money that wants these type of returns. I mean, if you're looking at, quite frankly, on a daily basis, Bitcoin is up 7%. If you go up 7% in 1 year, in traditional investing, I mean, that's a fantastic annual return. If you do that, if you do today's return every single day, once a year, you're basically, you could retire pretty happily. 7% compounding interest is a fantastic thing. So that's pretty great. So somebody mentioned a lot of Bitcoin Cash chatter on Twitter, and that seems like, now there's been a solid pump, and seems like some people are taking a second look. I mean, I think Bitcoin Cash is interesting. There's a lot of politics involved, which is one of the big reasons. I'm not a massive fan, just because it's very contentious, and I don't like the infighting and the people. I don't like Roger Ver yelling about Bitcoin core developers, and I don't like Bitcoin core developers kind of yelling back at him and the Craig Wright stuff and all that type of thing. So Bitcoin Cash is interesting. I mean, I think that it gives people more of an option as far as transactions. That's definitely something that right now it's expensive to move money in the Bitcoin network because of the how expensive Bitcoin is as a whole, and then the size of the blocks you have to compete from a transaction. You have to compete, so it doesn't make sense to do small value transactions on the Bitcoin network right now. With that being said, Bitcoin Cash is trying to solve for that and trying to hold true to the vision of Satoshi in the white paper, because Bitcoin was supposed to be a transactional cash version of something. On the other end of the spectrum, though, I think having that size of blocks makes for greater centralization, and that's kind of the argument on the side of the other side of the house. And then that's, in a lot of cases, I think a temporary fix is how many times can you increase the size of the blocks? And every time you increase the size of the blocks, how much more centralized does Bitcoin Cash get? Because you need a supercomputer to power a node or something like that. So that's it's something that it's really interesting. I would say that it's the Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash versus the scaling debates. It's a fascinating thing in my opinion, and something that is surprisingly pretty entertaining to read up on and to study on for sure. So somebody mentioned, what's my strategy for the SegWit 2x fork? Do I think the alts will pump once people get their free money and move into altcoins? Yeah, if it's anything similar to the Bitcoin Gold fork, I think that might happen. I think a lot of people, depending upon it depends upon the price of Bitcoin, but I wouldn't doubt people taking profits after the SegWit 2x fork after the SegWit 2x fork snapshot, because the incentive to hold on to Bitcoin after that point in time, there's a lot of people that were maybe previously not holding on to Bitcoin and just wanted the free dividend to make more money, and that incentive to hold on to it might eliminate once that goes away. So somebody mentioned bought a bunch of Electronium during the ICO. I made a video about it today. Talked a little bit about Electronium. A lot of people got mad and yelled at me. It is what it is, but they had some criticism from the development community at Monero. I think Electronium is an interesting concept. I think they're trying to make crypto more accessible. They're trying to make it easier to mine and reduce the centralization from ASICs. Although they're not the only ones that have tried that, but they're really just trying to make it, I guess, a simple cryptocurrency be a simpler, more user-friendly experience. And they did a really good job marketing. They had referral bonuses. I think that the CEO has a social media, was the CEO of like a social media company that did a lot of work with like Herbalife and a lot of other companies. So I'm personally not a big, Electroneum guy. I know a lot of people have invested in it. I think they have 300,000 plus investors or people that have bought Electroneum. So there's a lot of you guys out there that like Electroneum. So when I posted a video that was somewhat critical, people got really pissed off and came at me on Twitter and all this shit. So, I'm just trying to, the only thing I'm going to say is that, if I ever critique something, it's because I have valid concerns. Like if you invest something, I don't want you to lose your money at all. Like I want everybody on this chat, everybody watching this to make as much money as possible and to do, really well in the crypto world. I just think that just because you invest in something doesn't necessarily mean that it's bulletproof and that it's immune from criticism. So if I criticize something or if I bring up quote unquote negative news about it or valid concerns, that's not necessarily always FUD. But everybody likes to say the second anybody says anything that's critical of a project that it's FUD. So that's I guess my thought process there. But if you guys invested in Electroneum, I wish you the best of luck. I did not participate in it. I know it'll be interesting to see from a mining standpoint. It'd be pretty cool if you could actually mine something and it'd be worth the time. It'd be worth the time. I haven't mined anything recently. I'd like to mine things, but Herbalife coin is legit. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's my thought, guys. Like I know people are literally posting like shit on Twitter now, like saying I'm blah 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 blah. But then they literally sent me Twitter direct messages saying that they had $10,000 invested. So you gotta take the glasses off and look and say, is this FUD or is this just somebody out there? So, thank you very much for that super chat. Appreciate it, my man. Possibility of a dip to $5,700 before a final run up. That's an interesting question. I'll pop back over here. Possibility of a dip to 5,700. I mean, it's a little bit tough to say as far as where that might happen. I mean, we're at $5,700 today, so I mean, we could certainly just have this could be a nice spike, and we could correct back down. But will that happen? I think the thing to keep an eye on is, can Bitcoin close above $6,000 in the day? Is that something that Bitcoin's going to be able to do? Is it going to be able to close above $6,000, or is it going to get some resistance and a bunch of people are going to sell off and push that back below 6,000? If it goes below 6,000 later today, then I think you need to I think that there's a good possibility that it could be below 5,700. Or it could have a nice little correction there, and you could get some cheap. You could get some cheap Bitcoin. On the other side of the house, it seems like if Bitcoin can really close above $6,000, that's a pretty good sign of momentum. That's a pretty good sign that the vast majority of the market, thinks Bitcoin is worth what it should be at. So we'll see there. Greenlight Hawaii mentions, he said 5,000. Oh. So somebody else mentioned, I'm hoping to see Bitcoin $5,000 or less. And I don't know if barring any negative market news, I don't know if I would necessarily think that's going to happen before the SegWit 2x fork. After the B2X fork, yeah, I think you could certainly see below $5,000 Bitcoin if the sell-off is really, really extreme and there were just a lot of people parking their money in Bitcoin solely for the B2X fork. On the other side of the house, then maybe, but prior to the B2X fork, I would find it hard to believe that it'll go below 5,000, but I could certainly be wrong, and I'm definitely not somebody who could predict the future by any stretch. Now, Benji, just look at your own, homie. So, blockchain Rob, good name, my man. mention what do I think about EOS from a scaling perspective and an Ethereum killer. One of the things that there are a lot of cryptocurrencies out there that will say that they are there are a lot of cryptocurrencies out there that are that will say that we're an Ethereum killer, or we're a Bitcoin killer, or we are a Monero killer, whatever. Until they actually kill that cryptocurrency, I think that that's just kind of a marketing thing. Personally, EOS has some interesting technology. I'm not a big fan of the year-long ICO. I think that was a little strange, and I think that turned off a lot of people in the community. I think Ethereum obviously has Ethereum has some pretty, like Bitcoin, Ethereum has some scaling issues, and it's very unproven in a lot of respects. And, it's very unproven in a lot of respects. And then from there, who knows what's going to happen. But the one thing that Ethereum has going for it, and the one thing that Bitcoin has going for it, is really first mover advantage. Bitcoin and Ethereum are two different, I think, technologies in a lot of respects of why they're used and how they're used. Ethereum more the technology platform to build dApps off of. On the other hand, on the other side of the house, Bitcoin really more that store value and transactional. The transactional usefulness has been limited from the perspective of the transactional usefulness has been limited due to the fees. But Ethereum is, until something actually comes and really gets some market share and some usability, and people are actually utilizing the platform, I would hesitate to call EOS an Ethereum killer yet. Could it? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people say this, and I think it makes sense. But MySpace was the first social network. Is Ethereum MySpace or is Ethereum Facebook? You don't know, or we don't know yet. We might look back in history, and right now, what I'm saying might be completely wrong, but we'll end up seeing how that pans out. So taking a look at some of these questions here as well. So somebody mentioned thoughts on 10x. 10x is interesting. 10x has been, there goes Bitcoin a little bit. So let's pop it over to the 15 minutes as we're talking through some of this stuff. So Bitcoin is dropped about $50 in the past 15 minutes or so. So maybe there's been a little bit of resistance here, but from that side of the house, 10x is interesting. I think there's going to be there's a lot of companies out there that are trying to kind of be that credit card payment solution for cryptocurrency. The one thing that I'll say to that is in my opinion, there's also there's Metal, there is 10x, there are a couple other ones there. I know a lot of people are pretty positive on Metal as of late as well. I'm seeing Metal all over the place on Twitter, everywhere else. The one thing I'll say that is, I would say something of note, is that there's an issue with people holding on to cryptocurrency as investments, or rather than as spending mechanisms. I would say that's one thing that is really I think potentially can inhibit the success of like a 10x or of a Metal, because a lot of people like myself, I have no interest in going to Starbucks and buying. I have no interest in going to Panera, product placement. They didn't pay me, but I wish they did. I have no interest in going to Panera and spending Bitcoin to get a coffee, because I could spend $4 to get that coffee, but that coffee might, if I spend that with Bitcoin, maybe in 10 years, that coffee is worth $400. That could certainly happen. Whereas if I just go spend US dollars, if I spend the $4 today, maybe that $4 is worth $3.97 in 2 years, something like that. Like there's really no variation, and there's no difference there. So unless you're really, unless you have a ton of money in crypto, you're a freaking crypto billionaire, or whatever, then I don't think that there's going to be a, I don't know. I like the service that 10x and Metal and those companies are providing, but I think that that's something that you need to kind of be aware of going into the future. So somebody else is mentioning, will I do a live? A couple different people have asked, will I do a live stream during the fork event? Yeah, I will definitely try to. That was a good time during the Bitcoin Gold fork, and I think the interesting part about that is the price movements that happen like the second that snapshot happens. So I will definitely work to do we'll have to see as the time comes. I know it's done on a specific block number, I believe. Right now, I think there's an estimate, but obviously due to how long it takes to mine blocks and things like that, that the estimate is something to be aware of. So somebody's mentioning that the Bitcoin B2X isn't necessarily a dividend, and you can lose all your money without replay protection. Obviously, replay protection is really important. Replay protection is super, super important. So that is something that you definitely want to be aware of. And depending upon, I personally am going to keep my Bitcoin in my ledger during the fork. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But yeah. So Coin Collector, thank you very much for that super chat, my man. Appreciate that. Any thoughts on BQX? So we'll pop this over here. So we got Bitcoins. I'll pull up the website. In the past week or so, Bitcoins has done fairly well. It's had kind of a nice, pretty steady rise up in the past couple of weeks. For the most part, I would say it's kept fairly good pace with Bitcoin. And we can zoom out a little bit to the last month or so if CoinMarketCap decides to load. But for me personally, I'm looking at so I'll pull over Bitcoins here. It's a really, I think, there are a lot of interesting projects in cryptocurrency. I mean, that's absolutely a pretty much a damn guarantee from Bitcoin's from the cryptocurrency perspective. And I do think that there are a number of companies that are trying to tackle this problem of diversification within cryptocurrency and how to make that easier, whether it's through like ETF funds or if it is through if it's through ETF funds, if it's through managed funds where somebody does something else. There are a lot of interesting ways to there are a lot of interesting kind of ways to diversify, although everything is pretty, granted things pop out here and there, but things are pretty closely correlated in the crypto world. But one-click diversification is something that's really interesting for Bitcoins. I don't know if anybody's used it yet, or has if anybody has kind of tried this at all. I haven't yet. There's only so many things that, for the most part, that I can try. But it's a pretty interesting project here, and I think there are a lot of companies that are tackling this, and I think it's a useful problem to try and tackle for sure. So I haven't used Bitcoins yet, but I do think that this type of I use for my own it's it's like a personal capital or like a betterment or like a wealth front, which is pretty cool. So somebody mentioned which exchange is better, Poloniex or Bittrex. I like Bittrex a little bit better than Poloniex personally. And I've had good experiences with Bittrex. I've used Poloniex in the past, but I haven't felt a huge need to really have to use Poloniex as of recently. The main exchanges that I use is Bittrex for established coins. I've used Binance. I like Binance. It's actually not bad at all. EtherDelta is good for being like the first place that you can get a lot of these ERC20 tokens or recently ICO tokens. And then I also like Liqui's not bad as well. It just depends. I wouldn't, as far as any centralized or decentralized exchange, I would never leave an exchange. I would never leave your crypto on an exchange get your crypto in, make your trade, get it off, move it onto a ledger, move it onto a desktop wallet, whatever type of wallet you use. Just be safe. That's always for sure. And so somebody, Ha, just mentioned total market cap all-time high will pop over here. Let's see what is going on. Whoop. And so, yeah, and that was pretty interesting too. If we look, let's see, the past 3 months. So there was that one back September 1st, the crypto market peaked at about $178 billion. And then the altcoins really sold off, and crypto went all the way down to, I think, below $100 billion at one point in time. And now we're back up to about, now we are right now at 179 billion, which is pretty incredible. So somebody just mentioned better sites than CoinMarketCap. I mean, it depends on what you're looking to, what you're looking to do, what you're looking to accomplish. But I like Coinigy. I mean, I got Coinigy over here, and that's good for just a charting perspective. But CoinMarketCap is usually just easy for me. I use it just when I'm looking around and trying to see what's happening on a continual basis. But I like Coinigy. I think there's a lot of other ones that try to, do what CoinMarketCap does. I've heard CryptoWatch is also pretty helpful as well. Somebody mentioned what are your thoughts on Coinbase? I like Coinbase. I know some people have had good experiences with Coinbase. Some people have had bad experiences with Coinbase, but at least in the US, it's the best way to get cryptocurrencies, or it's the best way to buy it's the best way to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum or Litecoin, in my opinion, the easiest way, especially once you get your account set up and you have had it for a while and you get some nice limits. The one thing, it's tough, but anything in the crypto world right now, the amount of growth that has gone on in cryptocurrency, you really have to think about that. Like, you really do, as far as, you don't want to say like, okay, you need to cut these guys slack, but look at the trade, look at the volume down here of, back in, let's say back in February or January of last year, there was $129 million of 24-hour volume for all of cryptocurrency combined. $129 million for all of crypto combined. Right now, there's $6 billion. There's 60x volume. Granted, that's not all on Coinbase, but you could probably extrapolate that to affect, Coinbase and a lot of these other exchanges. So it makes it really difficult for a lot of these both centralized and decentralized exchanges to really handle the volume of new account setups, support tickets, all that stuff. So I know a lot of people get pissed off with Coinbase or with a lot of these other things, but you kind of have to look at it and be like, there's 60 times more volume than there was back in, or 50 or 40 or 30 or whatever it is, more volume than there was back less than a year ago. They haven't hired 60 more support people, or they haven't hired 60 more people. So that's that's pretty crazy. So thank you for that super chat there, Fantasy Cash Hog. Vertcoin's been interesting. I know a lot of people have been reaching out about Vertcoin, and it's peaked at around, let's say, $5 or so, consolidating a little bit here. From Vertcoin's perspective, I know there's a little bit with, Sorry about those BitConnect ads, Frankie. If I could block those BitConnect ads on my channel, I definitely would. Yeah, so apparently a lot of people had Vertcoin. I did not have Vertcoin. I didn't even really know kind of that this was coming at all. In a lot of ways, this is, not necessarily that it's Bitcoin Gold, but it's trying to accomplish a lot of what Bitcoin Gold was trying to accomplish, but it's actually implementing it, and it's actually not like bullshit. So, they're the people's coin. I think Bitcoin Gold was making, I don't know, something, taking the Donald Trump slogan and twisting the words around. There. So Vertcoin I think is fairly interesting from the perspective of making cryptocurrency a little bit more usable and resisting some of the mining centralization. I don't know if that's as big of a, I don't know if that's, we'll have to see, I guess, how that ends up playing out, because I think mining centralization is an issue and ASICs are an issue. But will that actually affect the price long term, and will that make the usability, make anything more, make anything more effective? Who knows? Who knows there? Taking a look at taking a look at some of these questions here. And guys, if you are new to the channel by any chance, I know a lot of you definitely Dakota, a lot of you guys out there definitely try to looking at some of these questions, but recognizing a lot of the names here. But if you are new by any chance, hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate that. I do daily videos on crypto, and then I also do these crypto YouTube live happy hours where I usually come in. It's Saturday, I got work tomorrow, so just drinking water today, but sometimes it's beer, sometimes it's whiskey, whatever it might be. And then if you have been subscribed, hit the little notify button just so you get notified anytime a new video comes out, or if hit that notify button so that when I do have a YouTube live, you get that on your phone there as well, or on your computer there too. So my anti-spam box, appreciate the question there, my man. How much of a decline in Bitcoin do you expect after the 2x fork? I'm definitely expecting a decline. I think that thank you for those subs. Appreciate it, everybody. But I'm definitely expecting a decline following the B2X fork. I think that it's going to be 10 to 20% might be realistic for sure. I mean, if we're trading at $6,000, $6,500, $6,000, that is a I think 10 to 20%. You're looking at $600 to $1,200 around correction, which I think wouldn't be out of the question by any stretch. I think a lot of people are going to take profits, and I think a lot of people are going to sell off after the B2X fork. The intensity of that will certainly depend upon how the intensity of it will be what's going to be interesting to watch, which is why I'll certainly try to do a YouTube live during that fork, because I think you're going to see a pretty big drop off, and I think you're going to see the money move directly into altcoins. So that should be a fun thing to see there as well. Amir mentioned, what is the date of the 2x fork? I believe it's mid-November. I want to say like November 15th or 16th, but some of you guys in the comments probably know that better than me actually off the top of your head. Or if you know that right now, definitely let me know in the comments if you know the specific date of the 2x fork, but it's not necessarily, it goes by block number and not by date. So Luke mentioned, how do you track profit loss on your trades? So I actually use, I would just recommend this website. It's not a referral link or anything like that, but check out bitcoin.tax. I think it's pretty cool. And that's what I just plan on. That's what I plan on working to hand to my accountant at the end of the year. So Blockfolio is good for just tracking your portfolio, but Bitcoin.tax is good to track profit and loss and capital gains, things like cost basis, sale proceeds, things like that. So they have a free setup if you want to check that out, and then I think that it's like $20 a one-time fee to get unlimited transactions. So that's what I've been using. And guys, outside of that, just wanted to pop in here this afternoon, this evening for a quick conversation with y'all. I'm probably gonna get ready for the week, get ready for for work on Monday, get some dinner queued up as well. So I appreciate all of your all your comments and all your questions today. Hope you had a good time. If you didn't get to catch the entire video, if you joined late, usually the YouTube recording, they'll just I think they just encode it and throw it up on YouTube pretty quickly. So if you want to watch the entire thing later, definitely feel free. It should be back up on YouTube in the probably within 30 minutes or an hour if you missed the beginning of it and some of the initial comments. So definitely definitely hop on that if you'd like. And again, if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Any questions as well, always feel free to comment on the videos. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter as well. I'll link, if you are new, I'll link to my Twitter profile here, and you can just shoot me a follow. Always feel free to tweet me as well. But I appreciate the time, guys, and I hope you have an awesome day, night.